When I was young, I saved the crown prince-to-be and ended up becoming the foolish and simple-minded Princess Almond. Every day, all I did was trail behind him. I once wet myself in public, bringing him utter humiliation. The crown prince never showed any dislike for me in front of others, but in private, he would grab my wrist in anger. Then one day at a palace banquet, the emperor grandfather wanted to arrange a marriage for me. He asked me which young lord I fancied. The crown prince clenched his jaw. Everyone thought I would ask to marry him. But to their shock, I bypassed the crown prince, pointed at Prince Chong Wang in his purple robes, and said, "I want to marry him." Foolish as I was, that was my only wish. The palace road was long. I'd been waiting there excitedly for a while when several carriages blocked my way. Inside were noble ladies from the capital. The daughter of Minister Li, who led the group, lifted the curtain and snapped at me. "You idiot! How dare you still come looking for His Highness the Crown Prince? Even if he's kind-hearted, do you have no shame at all? He's worked for months preparing the trade deal with the northern tribes, and you ruined it with your disgrace. If I were you, I'd have jumped into the river by now. How do you still have the nerve to show your face?" Everyone in the capital knew. The crown prince had spent countless days and nights negotiating a trade agreement with the nomads. Just when it was about to be signed, I wet myself in public, offending the nomads. The deal fell through. Instead, the city of Luoyang gained a new joke. The silly Princess Almond who followed the crown prince around wasn't just simple-minded, she wet herself too. Ever since then, no matter where the crown prince went, people laughed at him. He was once noble, graceful, and intelligent. Now, by some cruel twist of fate, he was tied to such a stain. I lowered my head and said nothing, like a child who knew she'd done wrong. One of the noble women tried to stop her. "Enough. His Highness has issued a decree. No one in Luoyang may mention Princess Almond's disgrace. It is to be treated as nothing but a false rumor. We are to protect her reputation at all costs." That was a new order from the crown prince, issued just yesterday. Anyone who dared to slander Almond would be charged with disrespecting the royal family. The crown prince rarely used his name to impose rules. This command wasn't for himself. It was to preserve my honor. Everyone laughed at me for being a fool, but only he remembered I was still a girl of marriageable age. The minister's daughter yanked the curtain shut with a heavy hand. She scoffed. "She's just a fool. No matter how much he protects her, would His Highness ever marry her?" There was no need to answer. Everyone already knew the truth. He wouldn't. The crown prince would never marry Almond. I waited on the palace road for a long time before the crown prince's carriage finally passed by. The young eunuch driving it brought the carriage to a stop. I waited for the curtain to lift, waited for His Highness to stretch out his hand like he always did and help me up. But this time he didn't. Confused, I looked up and tried to climb up on my own, but the eunuch blocked me. From behind the heavy yellow curtain came the crown prince's voice. Soft as jade, he said, "Almond, I'm in a hurry to leave the palace. There's still a lot to do." I nodded. Then I took out a sesame pastry from my sleeve and offered it to him. "I went all the way to the east of the city to buy your favorite sesame cake. Your Highness, eat it now while you're in the carriage. If your mother sees it later, she'll scold you again." The surroundings fell silent. After a moment, he said, "Almond, I haven't eaten sesame pastries in a long time. And my mother passed away 3 years ago." Everyone in the palace knew. When the crown prince was young, he was ambushed. Princess Almond, distracted the assassins so he could escape. But I ended up losing my mind. Since then, I couldn't remember things. 10 things told to me. I'd forget 9. Only the events before I was injured remained clear. I didn't know how the years had changed. I didn't understand that the world had moved on. Silently, I pulled my hand back. "Almond, I've been too busy lately. I'll send someone to take you home. When I have time, I'll come see you." Looking up at the tassels swaying on his carriage, I asked, "Then on the night of the spring outing, on your 15th birthday, will you come play with me?" The crown prince didn't answer. Even as the carriage rolled away, I never got a reply. That night, before bed, my maid dried my hair. I lay at my desk, holding a brush, writing things down. The thick booklet before me was already half filled. I wrote down everything that had happened today. The maid praised me. "Your handwriting is beautiful, princess." I swayed with pride. I inherited my handwriting from my mother, who once said I would create a style of my own and be unmatched in the world. But suddenly, a sense of helplessness filled me. My writing was exactly the same as it had been years ago when my mother was still alive. No improvement at all. Ever since I was hurt, I couldn't learn. I couldn't remember. That day, the nomads saw that I wasn't like others. They deliberately mocked and frightened me. I was so scared. I wet myself. The sound of it dripped in the silent hall, so loud, so clear. I stood frozen, overwhelmed with shame. I had never felt more aware than in that moment. The crown prince reacted faster than anyone. He took off his outer robe and draped it over me. The always gentle prince swept his icy gaze across the nomads, across the officials, across the maids, and said, "Anyone who dares speak of this incident shall not be forgiven." The nomads were expelled and forbidden from ever entering Luoyang again. Though his touch was gentle, it carried a stiffness he couldn't hide. After I bathed in the palace, I locked myself inside and refused to come out. The crown prince, despite the weight of his failed efforts, spent the entire afternoon comforting me at the door. Still, I wouldn't open it. Then, by accident, I kicked over the brazier. The hot coals nearly burned me. Fortunately, the crown prince kicked the door open in time. He grabbed my hand and, seeing me unharmed, was both frightened and furious. Had I not made enough mistakes over the years? The night before the spring sacrifice, I burned his ceremonial robes and was scolded by the emperor. I foolishly followed the crown prince everywhere, making him a laughingstock behind his back. His mother had passed, and yet I kept bringing up painful memories again and again. His path as crown prince was treacherous. Surrounded by scheming uncles like wolves and tigers, he no longer had the clever Amon to walk beside him. He had to walk it alone. He gripped my right hand, so tightly I gasped in pain. His jaw was clenched, his voice trembling with rage. "Amon, how long are you going to keep this up?" I looked at him, unable to speak. My face was soaked with silent tears, too afraid to cry out loud. Amon never meant to cause trouble. Amon was sick. Everyone else moved forward, but only Amon, remained standing still. At the start of spring, a banquet was held in the palace. The royal consorts and trusted attendants all gathered for the occasion. I sat tensely among them, keeping quiet, not speaking to anyone or responding easily. The maid assigned me by the crown prince stood beside me, instructing me on all sorts of matters. I tried to remember it all, but the very next moment, I forgot everything. The current emperor was not related to me by blood, yet he was especially fond of me and allowed me to call him Grandfather Emperor. After a few rounds of wine, he suddenly called my name, seemingly reminded of something. "Aw man." I quickly stood up. He said, "You must be turning 17. Have you taken a liking to any young men? If so, Grandfather Emperor will grant you a marriage." My eyes widened. Instinctively, I looked to the crown prince seated ahead of me, hoping he would tell me what to do. Unexpectedly, he lowered his gaze, as if he hadn't heard a thing. Only his clenched jaw and pale fingers gripping the wine cup betrayed his tension. My mind went blank. I asked, eyes wide, "Anyone at all?" Grandfather Emperor smiled and nodded. Everyone thought I would ask to marry the crown prince. But instead, I reached out my hand, bypassing him, and pointed to Prince Chong Wang in his purple robes. Nervous and full of hope, I said, "I want to marry him. May I?" The entire hall fell silent. Only the sharp crack of porcelain shattering broke the stillness. The crown prince's cup had fallen and smashed on the floor. Everyone turned to look, but he paused only a moment before calmly signaling the maids to clean up the shards, as though nothing had happened. Then he stood up, not to face me, but to turn away and politely apologize to Prince Chong Wang. "Ah man is mischievous and speaks nonsense. Please do not blame her, uncle." Prince Chong Wang's fief was in Yen Prefecture, and he rarely returned to Luoyang. Still, his reputation for cruelty and bloodshed was well known. The crown prince must have thought I was acting on a child's whim again, randomly picking someone and risking offending the prince, so he stepped in to apologize on my behalf, as he had done many times over the years. Though he addressed him as uncle, Prince Chong Wang was only a few years older than us. The scent of wine lingered, and the lacquerware gleamed. This prince in purple lifted his head, surprisingly handsome. His features still carried a boyish innocence. His smile outshone the flowers of spring and the moon of autumn. He said, "It's not nonsense." Music flowed gently through the hall like a stream. Everyone had expected him to be angry at being proposed to by a fool. They thought he would use the crown prince's excuse to bow out gracefully. But instead, he said, "Our man and I were betrothed long ago. We simply never made it public. But our parents exchanged tokens. When I was a boy, my mother mentioned it to me. Later, before our man's parents passed, they entrusted her to me." Prince Chong Wang stood and stepped forward, kneeling before the emperor. He was not of the emperor's direct bloodline and carried the air of the distant Yen lands. He opened his hand to reveal a jade pendant, crescent-shaped and familiar. It matched the one I wore every day around my neck. Together, they formed a full moon. Everyone understood then. "I came to the capital this time," he said, "to marry our man." No one had seen this coming. Among the women at the banquet, whispers spread. The wind in Yen must have scrambled his mind, rushing to marry a fool like her? Another added, "Well, this works out. His Highness won't have to be troubled by that fool anymore." Amid the murmurs, only the crown prince stood motionless, silent for a long time, his whole body cold. Then suddenly he spoke, interrupting the hall. "You and our man are strangers. How can one sentence of yours determine her fate? This marriage, might it not be completely fabricated?" Prince Chong Wang looked back, surprised, then smiled faintly. He turned to me and said, "Oh man, come here." His tone was familiar, like someone from long ago. The crown prince suddenly looked up at me, stunned. He had no idea that I knew Prince Chong Wang, even less that we had a marriage agreement. Carefully lifting my skirts, I walked past the low tables. As I passed the crown prince, I saw the hand hidden in his sleeve trembling slightly. I lowered my head, avoiding his gaze. Finally, I knelt beside Prince Chong Wang in front of the emperor. I never turned back, never looked at him again. Prince Chong Wang said, "Your Highness may not know, but though our man and I haven't met often, we had a promise. When she turned 17, I would come for her." In truth, I didn't remember who Prince Chong Wang was, nor did I know for sure whether a promise had ever existed. All I knew was that in my daily journal, written on the very first page in red ink, was a sentence. "If Prince Chong Wang comes to marry you one day, go with him. He wears purple, don't mistake him." I wrote that when I was 15. If he really came one day to marry me, then it meant it was time for our man to go. The emperor, already drunk, was confused but delighted. Since it was a match blessed by their late parents and both parties seemed willing, and Prince Chong Wang did not despise his bride's foolishness. This must be true affection. Who in the world could oppose such a destined union? The palace music was coming to an end when a sudden sharp pluck of strings rang out from somewhere. I turned around for no reason and saw the crown prince still standing in the hall of Weiyang alone. The wind stirred his hair at the temples. Tears shimmered in his eyes. It did not look like relief. That day, the emperor was too drunk to officially bestow the marriage. But rumors spread quickly through Luoyang. Prince Chong Wang of Yen had long been fated to marry Lady Aman, and their wedding was just around the corner. I, on the other hand, slept soundly, and when I awoke, I remembered nothing. After washing up, I took my unfinished wood carving and set off to read with the crown prince. But when I reached his residence, he was gone. A young eunuch told me his highness had gone out, but hesitated to say where. I nodded. I wasn't disappointed. Missing him was common. After all, he was grown now, and the emperor was entrusting him with more and more. I was happy for him. I walked slowly back down the long palace corridor. Then I saw an ornate carriage approaching. Inside were the most well-bred young ladies of Luoyang. When they saw me, they were not rude like Minister Li's daughter had been. They stopped and greeted me gently. Lady Alman. I looked at them. There were only 5 or 6. Today there was no banquet, nor any special occasion. So I asked curiously, "Why have you come to the palace today?" At my question, they all blushed. After they left, a palace maid told me the Empress was beginning to consider candidates for the Crown Prince's wife. He wasn't here today. Whether he had official duties or had gone to meet the Empress, I didn't know. I let out a sigh. The maid asked, "What's the matter, Lady Alman?" I whispered softly, "I won't be able to visit His Highness anymore." She smiled, like coaxing a child. "Even if he marries and has children, Lady Alman can still come play with him." I lowered my head. After a long while I spoke. "But His Highness won't play with me forever. One day, he'll have sons and daughters. One day, he'll become emperor. One day, his hair will turn white. But man will still be foolish, still only remembering the days of youth. One day, surely, I will be cast aside. And that is man's fault." I took my maid to the market, but on the stone bridge, we ran into 2 young officials. Narrow road, wrong place. I recognized them. They were both aligned with the Crown Prince's faction. They had been present the day I lost face before the Hu people. One of them turned his head away in disgust the moment he saw me, as if remembering my humiliation that day. The other, however, called out to me, "Your Grace." I stopped and looked at him calmly. He gave a shallow bow. "Lately, there have been talks about the Crown Prince's betrothal. Has Your Grace heard?" I nodded. "Your Grace keeps to yourself all day, perhaps unaware that His Highness stands on shaky ground and struggles with every step. The matter of opening trade with the Hu people, His Highness wasn't the only one working on it. We've all spent months on it. But in the end, it failed because Your Grace couldn't see it through. His Highness is kind and never blamed you. I know Your Grace has helped him greatly over the years, but even the greatest debt of gratitude must one day be repaid. His Highness has come of age. If he could marry into a powerful family, his path would be much easier. Forgive my boldness, but I have only one request. Please, Your Grace, do not stand in the way of his marriage. Do not bring him more trouble." The words twisted and turned, but for once, I understood them clearly. I stared at him blankly and murmured, I turned around. Then I heard a voice behind me. The young man who had refused to speak to me earlier now muttered disdainfully to his companion, "Why waste so many words on her? A fool like that, it's pointless." His tone was full of contempt. My maid couldn't hold back and was about to retort, but I reached out and stopped her. She said, "Your Grace, we should tell the Crown Prince. How dare he speak to you like that?" I shook my head and stared helplessly at the stone slabs beneath my feet. "We can't tell the Crown Prince. Man remembers. Back then, the Crown Prince wasn't yet the composed and gentle man he is now. He was still a temperamental young boy. When he saw the bruises on my forehead, he asked why. I burst into tears and said, they shoved and bullied man. He didn't say anything. He just took his sword and left. He didn't return until nightfall. Later, I found out he had gone looking for each of those arrogant noble brats who had hurt me. He scared them so badly, they never dared mock me again. For half a month after that, he was denounced by court officials as unfit to be heir and was flogged by imperial order. No one was allowed to visit him. No one except me. I was foolish enough to sneak in at night. I even brought him sesame cakes from the east side of the city. By candlelight, His Highness lay badly injured on the bed. I knelt beside him, and seeing his pale face, I couldn't stop the tears from falling. He smiled and said, "Why are you crying? I can't let our man suffer even a little." He always kept his word. All these years, he tried his best for me. But it didn't come without a cost. The grievances of the past, those noble sons he once frightened, they grew up, inherited their positions, and still resent him. I can't let the crown prince know about this. There's nothing he can do either. I was about to leave when I heard a loud splash. I turned back and saw a young man in purple kick someone into the river. Both the one who had lectured me and the one who mocked me had fallen into the water, flailing in panic. The young man in purple retracted his foot, watching them flounder with glee. He laughed heartily, like a child. Once he had his fill of laughter, he suddenly let out a curious, "Oh," as if just remembering something, and turned back to me. His tone was cheerful. Oh man, do you remember who I am?" The river flowed gently, fallen leaves swirled in the wind. Amid the noise around us, I saw his dazzling yet unfamiliar face. Just seeing him brought a wave of warmth and sourness to my chest. I knew he was the Prince of Chong Wang, always fond of wearing purple. But I couldn't recall who he was or how we knew each other. A man had forgotten. I felt I had done something wrong and stayed silent. But the Prince of Chong Wang smiled suddenly. "No need to remember. The last time you saw me, I definitely didn't look this good." Che. There was no reproach, no sadness in his expression, because from his heart, he truly felt this was just fine. The Prince of Chong Wang lived freely, following his whims. Every time he met a man again in life, it was as lovely as their first encounter. The world is full of filth, and hearts change easily. Only a man remains forever pure. The Prince of Chong Wang was an outrageous man. He could argue with a deputy minister of justice at a restaurant, or trip the only daughter of Prime Minister Lee in a perfume shop and make her fall flat on her face. If he saw officials quarreling over politics on the street, he'd try to break it up, only for the two of them to start fighting for real. Then he'd slip away unharmed, tugging me along to get beef noodles at the market. My maid was nearly scared speechless. She whispered, "I didn't think there could be someone even more reckless than Her Grace." While we ate, I rested my chin on my hand and asked, "Aren't you afraid of getting scolded?" His face was buried in the noodle bowl, and he mumbled, "Nope, no one dares scold me." He looked up and grinned. "I'm the Prince of Chong Wang after all." I envied him a little. A man can't be like that. I'll only get the people around me in trouble. But his eyes lit up. "Really? I don't mind trouble at all. You have no idea how boring Yen Prefecture is. I pray for trouble every day, just so I'll have something to do." Aw man, you've picked the right person to play with. He gently set down his chopsticks, blending them into the color of the wooden table. Then he stood to go pay the bill, but paused halfway and turned back, bright as the sun and moon. "You're still young. Don't be afraid of getting into trouble. I'll have your back." My eyes suddenly stung. Forgotten images began to rise like fluttering leaves. On a muddy road, soaking wet, a boy in purple carried me on his back, trudging through the muck. Rain veiled the night, and direction was a blur. He grumbled, "Even the roads in Luoyang are terrible. Aw man, come back to Yen Prefecture with me." I clung to his neck. Everything was cold around me. Only his body was warm. I mumbled, "No. Why not?" Years later, the Prince of Chong Wang never waited so long for another answer. The little princess on his back held back tears and said, "One day, you'll hate me too. At first you like me because I'm clever. Then pity me when I'm foolish. Over time, you'll grow tired, grow distant, and in the end, only disgust will remain. The kitchen matron, my childhood friends, even my imperial grandfather. And soon, the crown prince will be the same. Everyone in Luoyang does this." But I heard him say, offhandedly, "You won't know unless you try." Unless you try, how will you know he's not like the others? The night fog was as soft as a dream. I whispered, "Then when I turn 17, if I still bring shame to the crown prince, come and get me." "But what if I don't remember you by then? Will you be sad?" He said, "I'll tell you my name again. I'll always wear purple. So when you see me, just remember, someone this good-looking can't possibly be a bad person. The Prince of Chong Wang is not a bad person. A man may not remember, but she wrote it down. His Highness the Crown Prince is always busy and rarely has time to accompany me outside. It's no fun playing by myself. But it's different when I bring Prince Chong Wang along. He knows even better than I do where the fun spots in Luoyang are. In just 2 days, I'd even tried the wines sold in the deepest alley. Prince Chong Wang rented a small boat, and we floated along a narrow canal that wound through the city, passing food stalls and homes on either side. He didn't hire a boatman, he rowed it himself. As the sun began to set, it should have been a perfect evening. But then we heard someone telling stories on the riverbank, and the moment they mentioned Princess Aman, I knew they were talking bad about me again. Their tongues are sharp. Every time they talk about the royal family in Luoyang, they start with me. Nervously, I rose on tiptoe and covered Prince Chongwang's ears. I didn't want him to hear it. In the dusk, smoke curling from chimneys, Prince Chongwang suddenly flushed from his ears to his neck, just like the rosy glow of the sky. He turned to stare at me, stunned. But there was a bridge pillar ahead. He hadn't had time to steer away, and with a bang, the boat bumped into it. The boat rocked. I lost my balance. He reached out to catch me, but in the end, he fell into the water himself. I quickly leaned over the side. Then I saw a pair of hands grip the boat's edge, and Prince Chongwang surfaced, water running from the top of his head down his brows and nose. He muttered, "This water tastes terrible." I looked at him and suddenly burst out laughing. He probably didn't realize that a strand of green pondweed was stuck on top of his head. The little boat swayed gently. I didn't know what day it was anymore, only that I hadn't felt this happy in a long time. On the bridge above us, someone had apparently been silently watching for a while. Finally, a voice called out, "Aman." I looked up instinctively. It was the crown prince. He hadn't been around for days. He stood on the bridge, upright and handsome, though a trace of fatigue from political affairs showed beneath his eyes. He stood there in silence, stunned. How long had it been since he last saw Aman smile like that? Someone immediately pulled our boat to shore. I stepped off and walked toward him. He reached out and touched my hand, then my face. "It's still chilly in spring. Your hands and face are cold. You didn't listen to your nursemaid and dress properly, did you?" He turned away just as Prince Chongwang climbed out of the water, dripping from head to toe. The crown prince said, "Thank you for keeping Aman company today, Prince Chongwang. But her skirt is soaked now. She's prone to catching cold. I hope there won't be a next time." Then he looked at me and added, "It's getting late. Time to go home." Before getting into the carriage, I stole a glance back at Prince Chongwang. He was wringing the water from his sleeves but looked up and smiled at me. I could read his lips. Seen on a spring night, age 15. After we returned, I changed clothes, bathed, and was made to drink ginger soup by my nursemaid. I came out, ready to have the maids dry my hair, only to find the crown prince still there. He took the incense burner and used it to warm and dry my hair himself. I was reading a book about the natural world, deeply absorbed. I asked him, "Where is Yenzhou?" His hand paused midair. "It's a place much colder and more desolate than Luoyang. You wouldn't like it there." I frowned, troubled. "But I have to go. I'm betrothed to Prince Chongwang." The crown prince said, "If you don't want to marry, I'll speak to grandfather and refuse the engagement for you. You don't need to go far away. You can stay in Luoyang just like now." I turned my head slightly and saw his fingers pass through my black hair. "But what about Aman?" By the flickering candlelight, he looked down, his jaw trembling slightly. He whispered, "I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you for the rest of my life. Aman's troubles, he'd shoulder them forever. Even when he's old and gray, Aman would still be the same, innocent and joyful. But how much would he have to give up for that promise? How much would he lose?" I closed the book and sat in silence for a long time. Then, suddenly, I began to cry. What if Aman keeps making mistakes? What if the next time you're officially titled, I embarrass you again in public? Would you still take care of me then? Would you let people laugh at you for being clung to by a fool for a lifetime? You're the crown prince. You have to marry, have children, make connections, raise loyal followers, and help grandfather with state affairs. How could you possibly have time for Aman? I abruptly stood up, my voice rising, almost accusing. "In March, grandfather asked you to go on a southern tour on his behalf. Why didn't you go? Why did you refuse? You thought Amon would get into trouble if left alone in Luoyang. You were afraid you couldn't take care of me. Is that it? Do you think Amon is just a burden to you? You don't want to see me. You don't want to spend spring nights with me. You don't even want me in your carriage. It shouldn't be like this between us. Amon shouldn't be a burden. Yenzhou is a different kind of place. Not just because it's Prince Chong Wang's fiefdom. It's where my parents moved when I was 8. Our family roots are there. I was supposed to go with them, but I didn't. I stayed in Luoyang. Even after my parents died, I never went. But Amon can live alone in Yenzhou. There are arrangements left by my mother. I can live well, without troubling anyone. The crown prince looked at me, pained beyond words. He wanted to explain, but his lips trembled. Nothing came out. His face had gone pale, like paper-thin gold foil. But in just a moment, I was calm again. I blinked and said, "Oh," then smiled at him. "Your Highness, why do you look so much more grown up all of a sudden? Didn't we just celebrate your 15th birthday yesterday?" The crown prince stared at me, and suddenly a single tear fell. Once, the princess and the crown prince were hailed as Luoyang's golden couple. Everyone believed that in the future, their love would become legend, just like Tan Lang and Xiannu. But no one expected that, years later, things would turn out like this. She couldn't remember. She couldn't tell the passing of years. Joy and sorrow alike faded in a flash. She would never grow old. Amon would always stay right where she was. The spring night outing on my 15th birthday had me excited for a whole day in advance. My nanny styled my hair beautifully. I lifted my skirt happily and went out, while my maid chased after me, asking, "Aren't you waiting for the crown prince?" I paused, feeling a brief pang of disappointment. "No, I'm not waiting. He's too busy." Every year, the crown prince first had to attend the ancestral rites with the emperor, then eat and listen to lectures before he could find time to come out. He had so many affairs to handle, he was too tired. Especially since that one time I accidentally knocked over a lantern and burned my skirt, he wasn't pleased with me causing trouble. My maid had prepared a carriage for me, but I hesitated to get in. "Is the princess waiting for someone?" I said nothing, just widened my eyes staring down the long street. Waiting for whom? I was starting to forget. Suddenly, the sound of horses galloping came from the street's end. A young man in purple rode in, carrying a bunch of flowers. It was like a watercolor painting slowly coming to life. He wore deep purple robes, rode a snow-white horse, and held a large bouquet in front of him. He pulled the horse to a halt, almost showing off. "Amon, look at the flowers I picked from the mountain outskirts." Mud covered the hems of Prince Chong Wang's clothes. He grumbled, "The roads in Luoyang are still so bad. I fell once, but I'm willing to share half the flowers with you." My slow thoughts finally caught up. I realized the person I was waiting for today was him, Prince Chong Wang Yinche. That 15th spring night outing was especially lively. Countless lanterns flickered, fireworks lit the sky. Truly a magnificent festival. I watched the fire breathers with rapt attention, eating along with Prince Chong Wang until our bellies were full and round. During the lantern riddle guessing, I accidentally burned a hole in another girl's skirt again. Just as I was about to apologize, the girl turned around. It was the same Li Xianggua's daughter who had scolded me earlier on the palace road. I turned my head away, hating her and refusing to apologize. She wasn't a friendly person. Just as she prepared to pick a fight, she saw Prince Chong Wang behind me, grinning widely and tossing around one of the fire breathers' torches like a toy. Everyone in Luoyang these days knew. Prince Chong Wang was like a living deity, rumored to be ruthless, but actually a bit of a fool. Whoever bumped into him was unlucky, offended him at their peril, and could only swallow their anger. Li Xianggua's daughter shivered and gave up. As we turned to leave, she whispered softly, "Madman and fool." The noise of the crowd scattered her words to the wind. Who could hear? We had just taken 2 steps when he suddenly pointed at a quiet pavilion in a corner of the busy marketplace. The surrounding taverns and houses were brightly lit and bustling. But that place wasn't. The pavilion was old and empty, covered in dust, the former residents long gone. I felt a bit uneasy. No one hangs lanterns there. Prince Chong Wang said, looking back under the lamplight, shadows falling on his face. Then he smiled. Then I'll hang some. And you'll help me. I quietly watched him. His gaze held no nostalgia or regret. He only said, Aman, I just want you to play the guqin once more. I climbed the pavilion. The ancient guqin was already set up. After the palace lanterns were hung, the deserted pavilion shone like a bright pearl in the sleepless city of Luoyang. I hadn't touched the guqin for a very long time. I could never quite master new pieces. New techniques slipped my mind instantly. I had once smashed the guqin in frustration, and the crown prince said I was just sick. That crown prince, when will my illness be cured? I played the piece my mother taught me in my youth, clear and familiar. How clever I was back then, I only needed to hear it once to play it. Many years ago, I had played the same song here. When the lanterns were rehung, the strings on the guqin replaced, and the dust swept away, what would people remember? This pavilion was called Phoenix Pavilion, managed by the crown princesses of past generations. But since the crown prince's mother fell ill, it was left unused. Rumors said she had intended to leave it to the foolish Amon princess, but others mocked the idea, so she gave up. The 15th spring night outing was originally meant to be here at Phoenix Pavilion. Countless wonderful events took place here overnight. The greatest talents of the land gathered. The top scholars recited poetry on stage. Southern ladies performed blessing dances. At the height of the festivities, even the emperor would visit in disguise, sharing joy with his people. But the most celebrated, yet soon forgotten story was of the 12-year-old Amon princess, not yet foolish, clutching her guqin as she ascended the Phoenix Pavilion. The music didn't summon a phoenix or birds to circle above, but the entire marketplace fell silent because of her. Master Huining of Kongming Temple said, the princess's heart was pure. If untouched by worldly filth, her guqin skills would one day become unmatched in history. No one knew then that year the princess and crown prince would be captured and hunted. To let the crown prince escape safely, the princess was strangled and hung on a tree overnight by villains. No one knew how she barely survived, only that from then on she became foolish. So many years have passed. Amon hasn't changed, playing the old songs still as clear as clouds in the wind or morning dew. At first, her fingers were clumsy, but soon they moved fluidly, like a fish in water. From the first note, passers-by turned their heads. Slowly, a crowd gathered below the pavilion. When the long piece ended, the pavilion was packed. I stood and looked down. It was like that spring night years ago. The still innocent Amon princess looked back from the high pavilion, her bright eyes reflecting the lantern light. Though not yet grown, her future elegance was visible. Everything stopped there. Before the insults and rejection, no one below spoke, only long moments followed by whispers of awe. I saw many familiar faces, childhood friends, arrogant noble sons who had bullied me, and noble ladies who called me foolish, all ashamed, avoiding my gaze. Beyond the crowd, I saw the crown prince standing alone in the shimmering light. I don't know how long he had been watching. His throat was tight, his heart aching. What could he remember? Not just me playing the guqin publicly on Phoenix Pavilion, but even at ordinary court banquets, he would warn me over and over not to offend the emperor, afraid I would be set up or humiliated. He told me not to answer others carelessly, to ignore them, to try not to make mistakes, to hide me away, cover my flaws. So I would avoid gossip and trouble. Over time, he forgot, many forgot. The Amon princess was not just a foolish child, she was once a bright pearl of Luoyang. I turned and walked down the pavilion steps, saying nothing more, leaving behind only a pool of silent onlookers, just as if I had simply played a casual guqin tune in my youth. After a whole day of playing, it was long past my bedtime. I was so tired I could barely walk, waiting for Prince Chong Wang to ride his horse and take me home. But unexpectedly, he came empty-handed, half embarrassed, half annoyed. My horse was taken by the Deputy Minister of Justice. He claims my horse is connected to the case of the missing prized flowers from Princess Chang's Western Mountain Garden. He even said he'd come to trouble me in a few days. Ridiculous. Everyone knows he just holds a grudge because I argued with him at the tavern the other day. I yawned. So how is Aman supposed to get home? Aman's so sleepy. He squatted down in front of me. I'll carry you back. I walk faster than a horse. I obediently climbed onto his back and wrapped my arms tightly around his neck. The moonlight above was so bright. We gradually left the bustling marketplace behind as the noise faded away. I whispered, "Thank you." Sometimes Aman isn't clueless. When I covered his ears to keep him from hearing the rumors, he must have understood how much they bothered me. That's why he arranged for me to play the cheen tonight. His back was broad. I rested my forehead against the hollow of his neck. "Have we met many times before?" I asked. The notebook I used to record daily events was already thick with pages, but I rarely looked back. Too many notes gave me a headache, and muddling through life was fine by me. Also, even the things I wrote down were often mistaken or wrong, so it was better not to look. But today, when I accidentally flipped through, I saw the words "purple robe" on many pages. I thought, that must be Prince Chong Wang. He hummed softly. His eyes smiling, he said, "When I'm not busy in Yenzhou, I sneak into Luoyang to find you. Sometimes you're with the crown prince. More often, you're daydreaming alone." Our meetings were brief. Every time you saw me, you didn't remember me. Once, when your maid bought you a crispy pastry east of the city, you stood by the stone bridge lost in thought. I walked over and gave you a flower. You thought I was a flower seller and asked if I could bring flowers to you every day. But, Aman, do you know? I never thought that was bad. Things change, people are unpredictable, but each time we meet, it feels like the first time. You're the same as when I first met you. The people in Luoyang treat you badly? Never mind. We'll go to Yenzhou. We won't play with them. Warm tears trickled into his neck. I nodded firmly. Okay, let's go to Yenzhou. The Princess Aman was about to leave. The emperor specially issued an edict, ordering the imperial guards to escort her, showing the vast imperial favor. My maids busied themselves for 3 days, finally packing my luggage. Just as we were about to depart, Prince Chong Wang arrived late. He stood by the corridor, silent for a long while. What reason could stop a farewell or block someone seeking a better life? I hugged my bundle and hurried out, not even noticing the prince. I almost tripped over the threshold. I didn't fall, but my things spilled everywhere, small trinkets and scraps. The prince bent down to help me gather them and cautioned, "When you get to Yenzhou, take good care of yourself. I sent the nanny with you. Write to me whether you're happy or not. If you don't like it there, I'll bring you back." His voice was steady, but a tremor leaked through. He picked up a notebook, the very one I had been writing in since childhood. The page blown open by the wind showed childish handwriting, yellowed edges, worn with age. What was written there? "Father and mother are going to Yenzhou." I was packing when Prince Chongwang suddenly came over and asked if I could stay a few more days to watch the 15th Spring Night Festival with him. I knew he didn't like the crowds. He just didn't want me to leave. He's always afraid alone in the palace. I thought, mother has father with her, so she won't be afraid. Then I won't go to Yenzhou. I'll stay and keep the prince company. The prince's father died early. Crowned as heir since childhood, he was weak and timid, poor at making friends. Only Princess Aman, lively and proud as her name suggests, often kept him company. For the past 2 years, people in Luoyang mocked me for just following the prince everywhere, whether he had business or not. No one knew that year, during the spring night festival with lanterns lighting the flower market like daylight, I promised to watch over the prince who worried about being left behind. Don't be afraid, Your Highness. Aman will always stay by your side. How long is always? Always means a very long time, until the day you no longer need Aman. Back then, young and reckless, I thought always meant forever. Who knew it would end in 7 or 8 years? The prince suddenly looked up, trembling all over. But I had already packed and was heading out. I was going to Yenzhou. The carriage was waiting at the door, drawn by a snow-white horse, reins held by a youth in purple robes. I was about to lift the curtain to get in when I heard, "Aman." I turned abruptly. The prince was standing there, the wind stirring his shadow, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't take good care of you." For some reason, I suddenly burst into tears too. But in a flash, I blinked and looked confused. "Your Highness, what are you saying? You should go back. The Emperor will soon come inspect your studies. Aman will come back to see you." I smiled at the coachman. "You look like a flower seller I once met, who also loved to wear purple." After a moment, I said, "His name is Che." For some reason, he started laughing a beautiful laugh. Maybe it was because their names were the same. The carriage started moving. I looked back once more. The prince stood alone there. Suddenly, I remembered the poem my mother taught me when I was young. What was it? Something like, "On Phoenix Terrace, the phoenix roams, the phoenix gone, the terrace empty, the river flows on." So, the phoenix is gone, the terrace empty, and things have changed. The end.